Empires rise and fall, leaving behind stories of glory and lessons of downfall. Among them, the Roman Empire stands as a stark reminder of how greatness can unravel. Its decline was marked by economic turmoil, cultural fragmentation, political instability, and external pressures. But Rome's story is not just one of decline, it's a story of how a once thriving civilization faltered in the face of internal rot and changing external conditions. Today, millennials and Gen Z navigate a world shaped by similar forces. From economic struggles to political division, their challenges echo the decline of one of history's greatest empires. Let's explore these parallels and the lessons they hold for our future. Rome's economic decline was driven by several factors, but perhaps the most significant was the growing wealth inequality that plagued the empire. The elite class, especially the patricians, became wealthier and more powerful as the empire expanded, while the common people, particularly the plebeians and small farmers, were left behind. Rome's reliance on slave labor and war plunder made it difficult to foster innovation in agriculture and industry. In time, the economy stagnated, unable to adapt to new challenges. The government, in its desperation, resorted to printing more currency, causing rampant inflation and devaluation. By the time the empire was crumbling, inflation was so severe that the Roman denarius had lost much of its original value. The failure to reform the economy contributed directly to the fall of the empire. Today, millennials and Gen Z face a very different but similarly suffocating economic landscape. For them, the burdens of student debt, housing prices, and a gig economy that offers little stability are central to their daily lives. They are the most educated generations in history, yet many struggle to find stable jobs, let alone accumulate wealth. In Toronto, the average home price in 2024 was approximately 1.2 million Canadian dollars. In Vancouver, that number rose to 1.4 million Canadian dollars, making these cities some of the least affordable in the world. For the average young person, these astronomical prices are unattainable without years of saving or relying on family wealth. Yet, the median household income in Toronto hovers around 60,000 Canadian dollars, a figure that is insufficient to keep up with the rising cost of living. In Vancouver, it's even lower. Even renting isn't a viable option for many young people. The average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Toronto hit 2,600 Canadian dollars per month, and similar rental prices are seen in Vancouver, leaving millennials and Gen Z trapped in an endless cycle of unaffordable housing costs. These financial pressures echo the Roman Empire's economic divisions, where the wealthy elite continued to thrive while the lower classes were left to struggle. Rome also relied heavily on the tribute and resources from its provinces, much like how modern economies depend on a globalized system of trade and labor. However, as the empire expanded, maintaining control of its vast territory became increasingly difficult, and the economic imbalance became impossible to ignore. The stress on the system led to economic collapse, and the burden of this collapse fell hardest on the lower classes, much like the pressures millennials and Gen Z face today. The cultural cohesion that once defined Rome began to unravel as the empire expanded. Rome was originally built on a set of shared values, traditions, and an identity that celebrated unity and strength. However, as the empire conquered vast lands and incorporated people from diverse cultures, these shared values began to fracture. Internal divisions and external pressures created a fractured cultural identity. The Roman people struggled to hold on to the unity that had once made them so formidable. As Roman culture became increasingly diverse, the once cohesive identity became harder to define. The empire was stretched thin, not just militarily, but also culturally. Factions within the empire, whether based on class, ethnicity, or geography, fought for dominance, each pulling in different directions. Today's millennials and Gen Z are similarly navigating a fractured world. The rise of social media has created echo chambers where people retreat into like-minded groups, further deepening the cultural and ideological divides. On platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, users curate their realities, exposing themselves only to content that reinforces their beliefs. This has created a polarized society where conversations about identity, culture, and values are increasingly contentious. While Rome's cultural divisions were largely based on ethnicity and geography, today's cultural fragmentation is shaped by ideological, political, and social divides. Movements for social justice, gender equality, and environmentalism clash with more traditional views, creating tension and unrest. The need for unity has never been greater, yet the cultural divides seem more pronounced than ever before. This fracturing of cultural identity and the rise of political extremism mirror Rome's collapse. As the empire expanded, it became more difficult to maintain a cohesive identity. Similarly, today's younger generations are fighting to define themselves in a world where identities are fluid and the lines between tradition and progress are constantly shifting. Political instability, a fragile system. Rome's political instability reached a peak during the empire's decline. Corruption ran rampant, and political power was frequently seized through violent coups. Emperors came and went in quick succession, with little continuity or stability. The Senate, once a symbol of Roman political power, became a shadow of its former self, incapable of governing effectively. The empire's political systems were failing, and this dysfunction was evident to all. Much like Rome's later years, modern political systems are facing a crisis of trust. In the United States, Europe, and many other parts of the world, democratic institutions are under threat. Voter turnout has decreased in many places, and there is a growing sense of disillusionment with traditional political structures. Millennials and Gen Z are particularly vocal about their dissatisfaction with the status quo. They feel that politicians are more interested in maintaining power than addressing the real issues that affect their lives. Political polarization has reached new heights as the internet and social media exacerbate divisions between the right and left. In the US, for example, the divide between liberals and conservatives has grown more pronounced, with little room for compromise. Voter apathy is widespread, and many young people no longer trust that their votes will lead to meaningful change. Similarly, political corruption, whether in the form of corporate influence, gerrymandering, or scandal, is rampant, further eroding faith in government. Like Rome, which struggled to maintain a stable political system in its final years, today's governments are facing increasing dysfunction. As institutions crumble under the weight of corruption and partisanship, the younger generations are left to pick up the pieces, yet they often feel as though their efforts are futile, as political systems seem too entrenched in their dysfunction to adapt to the demands of modern society. Missed opportunities for innovation. A stagnant system. Rome also provides an example of missed opportunities for technological innovation. In the centuries leading up to its decline, Roman engineers and scientists developed rudimentary forms of steam power. They even constructed prototypes for steam engines that could have revolutionized transportation and industry. However, Rome's economy relied heavily on slave labor, which created no incentive for technological advancements that could replace human labor. The empire's focus on exploitation rather than innovation kept it from progressing in key areas that could have sustained its power. By contrast, today's world is experiencing unprecedented technological innovation. Artificial intelligence, renewable energy, and other breakthroughs are shaping the future in ways that the Romans could not have imagined. Yet, there are still powerful interests, corporations, governments, and other entities that often resist change when it threatens their economic power. The question now is whether the world will embrace innovation for the greater good, or whether we, like Rome, will fail to adapt in time. The fall of Rome was not inevitable. It was the result of a series of interconnected factors, including economic instability, cultural fragmentation, political dysfunction, and missed opportunities for innovation. While the empire's decline is a cautionary tale, it also serves as a reminder that no civilization is beyond reform. Millennials and Gen Z are facing immense challenges, but they also possess the tools and determination to build a better future. From embracing innovation to demanding accountability, their efforts could reshape society for the better. They have the opportunity to learn from Rome's mistakes and avoid the same pitfalls that led to the empire's collapse. The story of Rome reminds us that the future is never set in stone, and the choices we make today will determine the world we inherit tomorrow.